Hey, Kate, how you doing?
Great, great, Alex. How are you?
I'm not doing so bad. I mean, I'm in the most socialist province of the socialist country right now. Yeah. I try not to cry. That's why I laugh. But all in all, like like the nest is doing awesome. The job is great, but the situation is just like awfully bad. Like even though I don't feel that like I'm the I shouldn't be the candidate for like wanting to explode, right? Like you can see people before that like becoming like and it's we're not talking anxiety, we're just talking about being almost like pissed off and angry at the situation, like.
Yeah,
And like there's a point where you feel that like, when it's too much, and I feel that we're past that too much, and like it's all about seeing like this weekend. It was so sad seeing like restaurant owners and like small stores owner crying because they're losing everything. And like there's a point in there where like you're less than 10% or maybe a bit more than that, but you know that for whatever reason, like it's not about, like the motivation why someone gets or not doesn't get vaccinated, but like business are dying right now, like, and it's, probably my empathy, I guess, like, but it's heavy. It's heavy. And my day-to-day job is actually, like I'm a sales representative. So um meeting with people, sitting down with people, it pretty much is part of the job, but hasn't been for the past 2 years. And then, I'm kind of missing that. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, so I'm in Quebec for people that listens, like if you haven't listened to, I pretty much talk about it every fucking episodes in the past year. But so Kate, where are you located, and and how has been the pandemic for you so far?
I am in Calgary, Alberta, Canada,
Okay.
but originally I am from Ukraine. So I actually was raised and born in the one of the most socialist communities in the world
Wow.
because I was born in the Soviet Union. So it's this
And
kind
right.
of place of hopelessness, you know,
Yeah. Right
where
now, we're in wild times right now for Ukraine, right? Yes.
absolutely. And it's not getting easier, even after Ukraine gained independence in 1991. It still didn't get easier for us. And yeah, the pressure is big. The hopelessness, I think, that is like rising among people. But the worst thing that is happening right now in the country, and I haven't been there for 4 years, so it's hard for me to tell really. But what I see is people are just running away, trying to
Yeah.
find anything, any channel that they could just run away. Europe, States, Canada, Australia, any other country, but not there because people just don't see the future. And
And
yeah, and we always think that it's getting to that moment where it will be past the worst. But
yeah,
the you fall, and then you find out that there is still a place to fall. So yeah, so that's how it has been for my people where I come from. But yeah, here in Canada, as you might have heard, right, they are tightening up, the restrictions and trying to kind of keep it at bay. But yeah, so far there is a lot going on.
yeah. Um, few things, like my some of my best friends are from Haiti, and like when you talk about like kind of not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, those are conversations that I do have with these friends of mine, that I actually consider siblings, like that, like they're such great friends. And they moved to the Dominican Republic because of that. And my friend John Mark just told me, like, I don't see, you know, in my lifetime that I'm going to see IT to strive again. And that's sad. Like from especially when it's your birthplace. That someone tells you that like you from his lifetime he's not optimistic to see it doing better. That's really sad. Um, in terms of personally, how has it been with for you, Kate? Like the because like I felt like the weight of the confinement has like taken a bit of a toll after a while. 2 years in, like I feel it. Like I find it like heavy. How has it been for you?
It has been for me in both from both sides. So when the pandemic started in 2020, that's when I actually hit my rock bottom, right? So everything seemed like okay. Well, seemed like it was okay. But when we were locked down, right, all in our houses with the families, you kind of understand that you're actually disconnected. You're absolutely disconnected from yourself first and from your family members because you go to work, and it's just you see people for 1-2 hours. You see your kids for 1-2 hours a day.
Yep.
You see your partner for a couple of hours a day, and it feels okay. But when you start to live with that person for 40 days, day in day, right? And you don't go anywhere, you don't go out because we were freaked out, right? And we didn't know what will happen in the future. So this uncertainty just accelerated the whole stress, and that's when the alcohol came into again in our life, right? And I have been a drinker since 12, so for me it's a heavy topic. So in these 40 days that we spent at home, it was a whole lot of a transformation and understanding that it's not going to work if we don't find a way out, if we don't find a way out to communicate with each other, when we don't find a way to live with our life within this pandemic time. Like we both had works that were so dependent on the pandemic. So I worked in the retail store, which closed
Yep.
completely, and my husband as well. He worked at the warehouse that also shut down. So we needed to understand that where are we going with this, and where is this pandemic is going to lead us? Is it going to end, or is it just going to just drag on for years and years into the future? And of course, the prognosis were not really good because the wave after wave, right? And then it just rolled into summer and then rolled into the fall. And that's when we started to seek help from counseling, from self development courses, whatever we could find on the website or on the internet. We would take it just to find out what was happening in our life, and it helped a lot. And that's when I started to understand and really dive deep into the subconscious mind and started to unlock that old trauma from the past. So it wasn't a really fast transformation. However, couple of sessions that I had, I just kind of stopped drinking right away, and I decided that I will never go back, right? And that was a decision because I would relapse all the time. So pandemic was for me in both sides. So it was very hard and difficult, but at the same time, it was a way to find my way back.
To save your life, literally.
Absolutely. And my relationship and my family.
So let's take it back a little in terms of like your time. Like I usually make the kind of the analogy of like rewinding like a tape back to like your early days. You talked about like being born in Ukraine. What what are the first memories you got of, like that you feel has impacted you in terms of, like either you talked about alcohol use, but like sometimes it's, like either abuse, like or whatever it is, like that has impacted you, that kind of molded a bit of the Kate that you became eventually. Do you have like some of these memories of early days?
Yes, absolutely. My memories go way back into the childhood. My first memories was I was like about 2 years old, and that's a very conscious memory, I would say. And I'm in a daycare, and we are all wearing the same uniform, and I am not allowed to speak Ukrainian. So technically, we are not allowed to. It's 1989, so it's still the Soviet Union, and we are not allowed to speak Ukrainian. And my mom, when she goes to daycare with me, she says, please don't speak Ukrainian. You, because we are going to get in trouble. I'm going to lose my job, and your dad is going to lose your job. And that was like, I'm 2 years old. Like, I can't control what I say, you know? And if at home everyone is speaking Ukrainian, of course I want to speak Ukrainian as well. So that was a big shock. I understood that I cannot express myself. I have to shut down and either be very quiet, which I was until 3 years old. I actually didn't speak really. So that was my first encounter with limitations, restrictions, you know?
Censorship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then if I go back, if I go a little bit further, and I am 4 years old and we are at home, 3 or 4, and my parents are having a Christmas dinner or a New Year dinner, and they are drinking, of course, because that was the only distress substance that they could use. And I can hear that they are whispering and not talking about politics very loud because neighbors can hear. And if neighbors can hear, it can go to the government or whatever. So that was like, I understand. I remember that they were speaking very quietly if they wanted to discuss politics. So that
Wow.
was a huge trauma. And I would say it's a multi-generational trauma because my parents did not know how to express themselves. They just followed the rules. So that was my first memories. You have to shut up, shut down, and don't speak, don't express your feelings. If you do something wrong, you can get in trouble. If you speak your language, you can get in trouble. If you don't know Russian very well, you can get in trouble. So, however, I was lucky that I was only like 4 years old when the Soviet Union actually ceased to be, and we were kind of more free. However, the huge economic collapse happened in the country
Yep.
because of that. And then I remember these, the lack of food, right? And the lack of money. And I think my parents lost like a huge amount of savings because that was how the system was at that time. So these are my first memories. And every stress that my parents had, they would come home, and every single birthday party or any celebration was celebrated with alcohol. So, and of course, they would tell us that it's not good. So, kids, please don't drink. But my mind got confused. How wouldn't you drink if your parents do it almost every day? Though they were not alcoholics at all, but they would definitely release stress in that.
And would that be kind of the almost like the only moment where you would find them smiling or laughing is when they drank?
Absolutely, I would feel and see that they are free. They are free and they feel like they're careless and they're fearless, and that feeling I wanted to feel it by myself, because if, as you said, if not drinking and if not partying, let's just say, it was not a lot of joy in life. It was work, 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 survival, work, work, survival. And that happened to a majority of families back then.
In terms of, almost like it's almost like a genetics question. Um, I feel that like a country or a political party or like even like the head of state cannot find genetics, right? Like if you're rebellious in your soul, like like it's tough for a country to break that. Um, was there, like you said, like that they felt fearless or they felt like they were. Does any or both of your parents had that in them? Like kind of a rebellious genetics, in them.
I would say no. They were very compliant. And those little moments when they would, maybe drink a little bit, or maybe we would be somewhere in the nature when no one would hear us, right? We would go for a hike or something. You could feel that they probably wanted to express themselves. They just didn't know how. So in genetics, let's just say Ukrainian nature is very loving and kind and hardworking. However, if generation by generation were suppressed, of course that's going to happen with every next generation that was born. So I was born, and a little bit by little bit, moving it out of the country, I tried to close that gene, of like suppression and trauma. And then my kids would probably still have it, and then maybe their kids will be more free if we work towards it. But no, I think my parents were definitely very suppressed, very compliant, very fearful. And that was
And
another generation.
and because they were taught so, because they were like by parents, grandparents, and so on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we don't even know how the real Ukrainian spirit is because it was suppressed for so many years.
So losing your shit is not something that an Ukrainian person does very often.
Yes, technically there was no such a notion as counseling or therapy. So there was no.
And even going crazy. I mean, like just like because they were either be imprisoned or arrested or even killed, I guess.
Yes, or they would go into the psychic clinic. Those were like institutions, right? That people will get into, and they were considered to be very heavily like sick, and would be kept there for years in abuse and neglect if you showed any sign of stress or
Rebellion.
rebellion. Yes, yes. However, and because they knew that there will be no help, everyone kind of kept it in. There were a lot of abuse that was happening, but mostly within the family. So it was within the family or within the community. So that would happen, of course, because people would drink and they would lose their shit, of course, because they wouldn't hold it. But yeah, but in the reality, you couldn't speak up. You couldn't ask for help.
Was like how much of that does affect like your the creative side of your personality, for example? Like that must have been tough, like for any individuals, but especially for creative people. um how does it affect that? Because like you talked about your childhood, but like you start embarking on that teenager journey, and I'm guessing that like your brain is just like a volcano of ideas, and like just and was there any there's many questions in there, I know, but like, was there like an echo of what was going on the other side of the ocean as well?
Uh, yeah. So technically, the environment that we were growing back home, it's like a death of creativity. Like even if you have it, you don't believe in it. You have it, but you don't believe in it. And even if you have an idea, you think three times before you actually put that idea into action. And I remember, and that's in many families back home. And I'm wondering if it's happening that much in other countries. But what I've noticed here is more, of course, freedom to express. But I remember that most of the parents didn't want to work at the jobs that they were working. My mom wanted to be a designer, but designer was like non-existent back then. So she just became an accountant. And of course, she hated that job for the whole, like, she didn't hate it, I think. She kind of came to terms with it, but it wasn't like she was enjoying it and living her passion. The same with
Yeah.
me. I had lots of ideas when I started to, like, 11, 12. But at the same time, I wasn't allowed to really express. We didn't have internet, right? We didn't have
Yeah.
music just starting to come in, like I would get the small recordings of some American and British group, like music groups, right? And that was so rare. Only when we like grew up into like 16, that's when it became more free, and we went to the college and started to express ourselves. But absolutely, that environment kills creativity and self.
And as I understand, very little echo of what was going on elsewhere.
Yes.
So no, like so as you said, like before hitting like 15 or 16, you didn't know that people roam freely somewhere else.
Oh, absolutely. So mostly before 10, we were very closed in our country. So rarely did people travel because they didn't just have an opportunity. And then after I became, I think I first went abroad when I was 2020. That was my first time when I left Ukraine to see something else. And it was a cultural shock. And I went,
That
yeah, and I went to Turkey. And Turkey wasn't that developed country, but I had a cultural shock. Couldn't understand, like, how was I living for 20 years in this country? So yeah, we didn't know. And if we knew, it was like a magic. We would watch like a TV. We started to have some channels, coming in, like MTV, or like BBC News. We started to see other cultures and how they live, but we kind of couldn't believe in it because, like, we were like, well, this is something that it's just made up. It's just all made up. This is all just for the picture. So when you look at the music videos and anything that happens, you look at that and you look like, oh my god, I'm not. I don't even think I would ever be able to experience any of that. But when you grow up, of course, when you go to college, it became more liberal. People started to travel more. We started to be more open. It was opening some visas to other countries. And that's when people would come back, pack their suitcases, and run.
yeah, no doubt. Um, when does the alcohol slides into that? While you're growing.
Yeah. Alcohol came into my life when I was 12, and it mostly come into people's life back home when I was growing up. Most of us started to drink around 12, 14.
How was it introduced to you?
At the summer camp. So there is no license, right? There was no license. There was no age restriction. Like, you could go into the store, you're 12, and you could buy a bottle of alcohol. So there wasn't any restriction. Restrictions came much later when we were not allowed to buy until like the age of 18. But before that, we could buy anything. Cigarettes, yes. Drugs, yes. It was everywhere. Very accessible. Very cheap. That's the thing. We didn't have a lot of money, but we definitely had money for alcohol. We could afford it, even with our like pocket money. And that's when it started. And that's when the trauma that I held in myself, and I tried a little bit of the alcohol. And that's when I understood, oh, that's actually numbs the pain. That helps a lot. And then your mind is very smart. It records this feeling, and it replays it over and over again as long as you feel sad. So it's like a looping thought. You wake up, you feel like, oh yeah, oh my God, this shit is again here, if I drink a little bit, it's going to get easier because you remember that happened yesterday. And then you
Yep.
drink again and you numb the pain, right? But of course, you wake up with the more pain that you were in. But
Yep.
it doesn't matter. Your mind doesn't understand at that point that it actually doesn't benefit your body. At that point, the
So,
mind just survives.
and I understand that it quickly becomes almost like a daily habit because of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because this is what helps, and there was no other options available. There was no one to tell you, you know what, let's talk. Let's make your trauma not isolated, but actually open up, talk about it. No one would do that. So everyone would just go to any substance that they could use in order to numb the pain. So we think that when we see a person who is addicted to anything, we feel like, oh my God, they're doing so bad to their health. But in reality, their mind doesn't understand. Their mind is saving them, because if they don't drink, they're going to be in so much pain that their mind can do something. So this is this survival mode. Your mind think, oh, if you don't drink, you're in so much emotional pain that who knows? What if you decide to end your life? But if you drink, you don't do that. So go and drink. So that takes a lot of courage for a person to really realize that and to start, uncovering the past.
What's your at that time, like growing up from 12, 13, 14, what's your kind of the it's kind of a twofold question, but like what is the education possibility and what is your education aspiration at the time?
Um, you mean education, right?
Yeah, academia, and then, like because of what you just explained, there are kind of two questions in there. Like you talked about your mom that wanted to be a designer and became an accountant. That means that, like in terms of possibility, it was quite limited as I understand. But, like her passion or intention was probably design. In your case, what was your intention and what was the possibility?
Yeah. So at exactly 12 years old, my brother, he was taking some English classes from the teacher, and he decided that he doesn't want to do that anymore. And we didn't have money to put both. Like my parents didn't have money to put us both into English class, so they had to choose. But when he said no, I kind of jumped in and said, I want to do that because something told me. And then I got my first recording of the Spice Girls. And I looked and I listened and I was like, they have something that I don't have. But if I know English, I might also have that. So that's when I jumped into learning English. And that was the only kind of hobby that I had. The only hobby, though it was very limited. The lessons were very limited, right? However, I kind of soaked it all in. And I knew that if I know English, I might be able to run. Because I don't know if someone told me that, or maybe I've heard it at some point on some unconscious level, that if you know the language, you might be able to survive out there, outside of Ukraine, which was actually true. So that's what my aspiration was. In terms of education, I started to really pursue the language through smoking, through alcohol, but I still kind of, tried to
W-
really learn as much as I could.
So you go through your teens. Um, what is the academia objective by then? Like what do you want to become?
Yeah, I wanted to become an English teacher, English language teacher.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to
Wow.
be a teacher for kids, right? And it was the only option that at least I somehow liked, because it was really hard to tell what I actually liked. When you are not allowed to really express yourself, you don't really know how to connect to your passion, to your aspiration, like, to your inspirations, your something that really kind of draws to you. Like you cannot. So the only thing that I could grasp onto it was the English language. And that was my objective, to go to the university and to get the masters or bachelors of education and to start teaching. And maybe by that time, I had this little idea that maybe by that time, maybe something will happen and I'll be able to escape somehow. I didn't know.
So the end goal is to get the F out of there.
Yes, I had that dream and had that vision in my head. And I wouldn't tell that to anyone, because if I did, it could get like, I could get criticized, and I could get like, oh, no one can go there. You are who? You will never be anyone there. So I didn't want to tell anyone, but I had this vision that I see myself somewhere else, not in Ukraine. However, I only got there 10 years later when I was 29.
So between 19 and 29, what happens?
A couple of jobs happened. I graduated from the university, got into school for the practice, understood that it's actually not what I like. And I was very disappointed because I had these dreams, expectations as a young person. And of course, school is not like that. School is lots of paperwork, not a lot of
Yep.
dealing with kids, just making them keep quiet, and that's it. There is not a lot of creativity that you can develop. Kids are so creative. And at that point, it was 2007, 2008. It became more like like the internet came in, right? In full force in the country, right? There were so many resources that you could get. You could make that education for kids so much more interesting. However, the system still worked, and the system was old. So there was not a lot of freedom in terms of teaching. And so but I still went back into education. I still went back to work in the university, more like administrative assistant, and I loved working with people. So it was okay. But as I said, it was okay. It
Yeah.
was something that you really love to do. And so in 3-5 years after getting a child, I understood that if I don't change anything, that's gonna just continue. And so I decided to open my own business. And that's when me and my dad, we opened the restaurant. We decided to go into completely different, field, completely different industry, and just open from scratch, build it from scratch, on the piece of land that we had just not far away from our house. We decided to build up the restaurant and open it, and it went very well. However, the alcohol and the cigarettes became even more accessible to me.
Yep.
When you have a restaurant, you can have it whenever you want.
You can smoke all you want. You can drink all you want.
Absolutely. And that's what I started to do. Every single stress at work, and restaurant business is a lot of work. And I was in the kitchen and I was cleaning and I was doing everything with my team, of course. But but every day, almost every day, you need to distress. You need to numb the pain, because the pain is still there. If you don't get the cause, you're just gonna numb the symptoms.
You mentioned your first kid, so that means that by that time you already had a boyfriend and that's starting a family life.
Absolutely. I married very young. I married when I was 20, almost 21. And it's a cultural, right? So if I met my husband at 18, and we didn't plan to marry really, but the pressure from the parents, from the culture, and we of course didn't have our own boundaries. We didn't have our own point of view. We didn't have a voice to voice what we want. So we just got married. Young, immature, with our own emotional baggage. We got married and we got a child in 1 year. So I was 22 when I got my daughter. My daughter, poor girl, she witnessed everything. She witnessed all of the things, my drinking, fights that we had, because of course we were young, right? And we didn't understand what we want from each other, was my husband. And he was really smart and told me that, Kate, if I don't get you out of the restaurant, you're going to drink yourself into a big hole. And I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to help you. The only thing I can do is get you out of there. And that's when he suggested, let's try to immigrate. And that was the exact same year when the military conflict started back home.
So so your husband opens up that window of opportunity for you two or you three to leave the country.
Absolutely. Because he didn't know how to help me. He would talk to me. He would try to, Kate, look at you. I cannot see you like that. It's ruining your life first. It's ruining the life of the kid who is looking at all of that. And it's ruining our relationship. So I really appreciate that she actually pointed out to my life first. And that's when I understood that something needs to change. But of course, I didn't know how to take action. So I didn't know how to really be proactive. I was completely reactive person.
How easy is it at that time to leave the country?
With the English language, it wasn't easy, but it was possible. The only thing that the person needs to do is like a consistency, to have a plan, right? So, and that's what we started to do, and it took us quite a few years to develop the plan to okay, what program to take. We started to really apply here and there, looking at what our options were at that time. But in case a person knows a language and they can pass this international exam, it is possible. At that point, it became more possible than it was when I was a kid.
And when do you decide and how do you decide where you're going to be going? How does that happen?
We had this map of the world, and it's funny, right? You have this map of the world on your wall, this for education for kids, and then you look, and we sat with my husband and we looked, and it was like, okay, what are our options? Probably an English speaking country, right? We looked at New Zealand and Australia, and they had like a really complicated process, so we kind of put it aside. We looked at Great Britain, and it has even more restriction in terms of getting a visa or any type of permanent residence. We looked at the States, and they had the lottery. They had the lottery every year, and you win it or you not, so you can actually try forever. And we looked at Canada. And we looked at Canada, and Canada had the immigration process, like the whole qualifying immigration process. The only thing that I knew about Canada is that it is very cold. Because that's all our knowledge was, right? I
Yeah.
knew that there are a lot of Olympic Games that were there, and that's it. And when we looked at the map, and I was like, okay, let's try Canada, because at least it gave us an option to gather documents and to apply. So that's how Canada came into our view.
And you said that you moved at 29. How was that? How was, like packing your things? How did your parents react?
Oh, that's the whole lot of that's like a drama episode, episode like last episode, yeah. So that's how it was, because my parents are very, very limited in their mindset in terms of how things are supposed to be. So they're more like, reactive as well, like, let's not go out of the comfort zone. So of course, when they found out, and we kept the secret of all the immigration process from everyone, and when we told them that we are actually leaving in 5 months, when we got our documents, it was a huge heartbreak for them. A huge heartbreak. They would ask us, plead, do anything they can, to try and kind of change our mind. But of course, nothing would work because we set our mind already, and we already saw ourselves not in Ukraine. And that's how the packing, very fast, 3 suitcases, 20 kg for each person, and we were out. Left everything, business. My husband left his business. I left my business, everything, just for that chance.
And you didn't leave your problems though. The problems as problem has followed you.
Yes, problems I packed was my suitcase as well. Like the numbing of the pain, the fear of criticism, fear of failure, fear of acceptance, low self confidence, low belief in myself, scarcity, like all of that, I packed and brought it to Canada.
So you arrive in Canada. You know, how quickly does these problems unpack themselves and creeps back into your life?
Yeah. And this is a really interesting part, right? Because when you are very, very stressed, it is really hard to think about anything else but survival. And that's what happened back home. When we got to Canada, we found a job. It was a low paying job, but it was a job. It kept us
Yep.
going. It gave us everything we wanted in terms of food, right? We started to grow, of course, in our positions because Canada gives you that opportunity. If you go and look for the job, you work hard, you're going to get somewhere. And we didn't have high expectations. And everyone would tell us that Canada is in a recession, and it was 2016, and it was another oil and gas recession, and we came to Alberta, and everyone would tell us, why did you come here? There is no jobs. But we were not in oil and gas. We were not in IT. We were just the regular workers, right? So we found a regular retail jobs, and started to kind of work our way together. But we understood that we can at least satisfy our basic needs. The need for house, for warm, right? The need for food, and the need for connection in terms of like we found friends here, right? So it was these basic needs were met. So when you meet those basic needs, you can jump into another level. And that's when we started to think about our life and what do we plan for the future. But it took us it took us a good 4 years until we finally understood that, oh, there is something actually more to our life than just an American dream, than just a house and a car parked and a dog, and it is something much more. And if we don't uncover the past, we won't be able to see that. And that
W-
happened right when the pandemic happened.
So the problems resurfaces coincidentally as the pandemic hits the region.
Absolutely, because we were isolated.
Bored.
Absolutely. So you bring it all, isolation. So there is no friends. So there is no one to compare yourself to. You're just in your house. You actually have to deal with all of it. There is no, so you have to start to learn how to communicate with your husband again, because it was all on terms of like, oh, friends, parties, work. So it was all like so fast. And then now
Yeah.
you slow down during the pandemic, all of the life slowed down, and you need to really, and that's how the problems resurface. So the low self confidence, the uncertainty, the loss of control, the lack of information, all of that just was brought to light.
What brings an end to this? Like what what has brought an end for you to stop and decide? And I'm guessing your husband is as well, or your husband kept going?
Yeah. So my first encounter was hypnotherapy and hypnosis, right? That's when I understood that what I think on my conscious level is just like a little, this 5% of my life. And when I started to tap into my subconscious level, that's where I started to uncover all the past, all the beliefs that I formed, and that's where I actually tried the hypnotherapy for myself. Just because I knew that addiction is usually, and I've heard that it's good, and it helps much more than the talk therapy, right? And when I tried it, and it was one session, and I just stopped cold turkey.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you knew that this is what you needed.
Yes, I needed to find out what emotion I connected to alcohol or to cigarettes. I found out that emotion when she was asking me what was happening in your life at the age of 12 that you decided to take and drink it. And I went back and I was like, oh, that I'm not good enough.
Hmm.
That if I drink, I'll be good enough to fit in. I'll have someone to connect to because I couldn't connect at home. Because my brother was bullying me so much that my confidence was just so low, I didn't believe in myself. But when I drank, it was so cool. It felt so real. I was so confident. So I connected that emotion. And then she asked me, so every time you drink now, what emotion do you have? The same disconnection, the same desire to fit in into the group of friends, the same only option that I think my subconscious mind still thinks that is the only option to release stress. So every time after the session, every time I looked at the alcohol, I knew exactly why I decided to take that step. And I just didn't want it anymore.
Did the husband follow through as well?
Yes, yes. He kind of saw the shift in me first. He saw the shift and he's like, I have been telling you this for so many years that we need to stop, drinking. He also like kind of drank, right? But he was like, I always knew there is something that was, holding us back from starting like a more healthy life, but I just didn't know what was that. But you kind of changed so fast and like such a huge shift in you.
Hmm.
Because even when I stopped smoking, the craving was there all the time. Yes, I did stop because I was having another child and I was breastfeeding. So I was like a very good girl. I wouldn't smoke and drink when I breastfeed. But the first day after I stopped doing that, I would drink and smoke.
Yep.
So the craving was there all the time.
Like before we started recording, you told me that like you were pretty much a mix of the two. Like you, in terms of like being helping others. Now that you found and overcame your most your toughest challenges in your life. Can you tell me about like what you decided to do with that kind of that gift that was given to you in your life?
Yeah, when I started to really understand that, because you don't understand how bad it is until you get better. And then
Yep.
you look back and you're like, oh, wow, that's how I was living for years and years. And then I was still working at my job, at my retail job. And I was having a couple of people that worked with me as a team. And I had to coach them as part of the position. So I looked at them and I tried to coach them, and I understood that they also have their own limiting beliefs. They have their own trauma that is actually holding them back from growing, holding them back from changing. And I was like, well, if it helped me, it probably will. If I do that, it will help others as well. And that's when I took the school, right? I took the course and started to learn hypnotherapy for myself and for my future clients.
And how has it been going so far?
And it's amazing. It is a gift, as you said. It is a gift. And usually people go to hypnotherapy when everything else doesn't work.
Has failed?
Yes,
Yeah.
right? Because some people are really self motivated and they go for a couple of counseling sessions and they're great, but not everyone. And some people struggle for years. So when everything fails for them, they go to alternative methods for these complementary.
And at the same time, like for many people, hypnotherapy sounds like esoteric. Like it sounds like mystics and magic. While like it's been used for hundreds and hundreds of years. Like so. Um, so have you decided to? So you decided to open a practice, like people can actually find you?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I graduated in the end of October from the program last year, and I opened the practice right away. Got the insurance in Canada, and started to work right away. Outreaching to my friends first, getting first from my circle of friends and my network. And then people just started to refer to other people, and that's how you grow your clientele, right? Yeah, and then now it's
It
like a steady flow of clients, but the more important part is how much transformation you do.
does. Can this be done remotely?
Yes, hypnosis works amazingly well over Zoom, over Skype, as well as in person.
Wow. And so where can people find you if people want to know more about Kate and reach out to you? Where can they find you?
They can find me on social media platforms. I'm very active on Instagram. Kate Semeniuk is there, and on Facebook as well. Kate Semeniuk Hypnotherapy, and I am there. And I also have a website, katesemeniuk.com, where they can connect with me in many ways.
And for those that listen, you can look at the description notes of the episode. You can find all of the links to reach out to Kate. And super easy. Um, Kate, thanks a lot for your time. It was quite a journey. I mean, there really is something about um and I say that from the bottom of my heart. Like the you have to know someone that has been unrooted from their roots. You have to intimately, and I mean that by friendship or relation, you have to know them in their intimate life to understand what you've been saying about like kind of being unrooted from like where like your native land. I say that because like I said, like some of my closest friends are people that are born in Haiti and it's actually their motherland, and like you feel um you understand the pain, and you do understand as well that it's not that easy. It's not as easy as to just say, well, move, like just move out of there. And um and it is like something that I will remember from our conversation is that like there really is something in there that it's a phenomenal thing that like our country has welcomed you, no doubt, but at the same time, um I try my best to understand the pain, that you've gone through, like despite, the country you've left, like the country can be as shitty as it can be, but like it still is your birthplace, like and that's the almost like the sad part of it all, like and I thank you for sharing that with my audience, really.
Very welcome. And I hope that every one of your listeners will just accept the way they are going, and everything that happens in our life actually brings us to the way we are now. That there is a lot of shitty things that happen in our life, but it's somehow when you turn back, that exactly those moments brought you to the way you are now. And, if the listeners are actually looking for some healing journey, right? They need to look back and think, yes, that was so bad in the past, but it brought me to where I am now. So it's probably brought me even further.
And I'll take that one step further. Like, take fucking action. Like whatever you do, take action. Whatever you try. Like like a lot of people are seeking um to be better, but like they don't do shit about it. And so whatever you try, like you mentioned that like hypnotherapy is kind of the last resort. Well, at least try something. Like so if you end up trying hypnotherapy, well, so be it. But at least like try and acknowledge that like there's something, well, so many things you can do that is different from your habits. Like you mentioned drinking, smoking, and all of that are like that they're mostly old habits for people that keep doing the same thing over and over. And um that doesn't mean that like you need to necessarily quit cold turkey the next day. It's just that take action to something, like, and a lot of the times, like these actions leads to realizing that you need to change some of the habits you have. And but it starts with that one first step, which is like, okay, let me try to look, like if there are any other options than taking that fucking drink again, or taking that, like rolling myself a blunt again, and or taking a fix, or hitting that line of coke and whatever. Um, but it is by like at least taking one step forward into trying something different, and yeah, can and I think that's probably one of the first action you took is at least trying something different. Obviously in your life you did so, like you for God's sake you changed country, so you
Absolutely.
tried something big different.
Your audience needs to understand that I quit smoking 40 times until I found a way how to quit it, right? I quit drinking dozens of times before I found a way. So it's a success. It's failure and plus failure and plus couple more failure until it becomes success.
Yeah, it is.
But it brings us to look for those options. Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you for your time, Kate. It was
No,
appreciated. I encourage every follower to at least go take a look at what you do. See, like it kind of gives you an idea and a taste of what hypnotherapy is about. And if they feel, like if they have the feeling to do so, that they reach out to you. And it was a pleasure having you on. And I wish you the best of luck and the best of success in your new ventures.
thank you. You too, Alex. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.